In our industry, I feel like everything is an under-recognized challenge.
For 50, 60 years, mental health was, sort of pushed down, swept under the rug.
Creating, constantly being creative is so much on an individual.
Our community is nomadic and they're moving, and it's really hard to have consistent care if you have to have a clinician who is licensed in the area where you live, but you don't really live there.
We also see a lot of folks still contributing to the stigma. It can be really hard to feel like I can speak up about my mental health and maintain my job.
One of the biggest things is building a preventative model into the daily work that we do.
And a real focused effort around trying to help mitigate those risks and problems and the things that come from that.
I think it's just giving people the confidence that this human's life matters, and maybe that conversation will save them from a crisis situation.
The willingness to be vulnerable as a culture and to look each other in the eye as humans and not just as whatever our role is in the industry.
We could do a lot of good by talking about it and being really open about that's at all levels of work.
There's no reason to do any of this alone. We're here to serve.
Hi guys, happy CRS Day 2. We are super excited to get into our second cycle of a song, looking at Tucker Wetmore's Wind Up Missing You. So without further ado, put your hands together and let's bring out our panelists and Tucker.
Hello.
Hello,
nice
everybody.
To see everybody. Thank you guys for coming to a cycle of a song. I'm not going to do introductions since everybody's title is up there, but this is part of the Tucker Wetmore team, and we're going to have the pleasure of talking through what last year looked like. 2024 was obviously a huge year. It was really fun reflecting, even prepping for this panel and just talking about what Wind Up Missing You did for Tucker and for everybody on the stage. So we'll just get right to it. Wind Up Missing You came out around a year ago, and since then it has charted on the Hot 100 Billboard chart, Media Base #1, many other #1s followed that. It became an RIAA Platinum single, and it landed Tucker on the Billboard Emerging Artist Chart, Vivo, Music Row, Billboard, Opry, Spotify, all of those new artist programs, and set him up for an incredible 2025. And he's already hard at work. So Tucker, we'll just move right along, right into it. And
let's do it.
For those of the people in the audience who might not know your story, just give a little snapshot of who you are and where you came from.
Well, my name is Tucker Wetmore. I'm originally from Washington State. I grew up playing sports my entire life. Started playing music when I was 11. I kind of sat down at a piano one day and didn't really get up for years, and I kind of put down music for a little bit to focus on sports during high school. And then I ended up going to college in Montana to play football. And I was about a year into my career, and I ended up getting injured for the third time. And it was kind of like the last injury I could do. And I kind of thought to myself, I want to be able to get up off my couch at age 30 one day. And so I kind of packed up all my stuff, moved back home, was super lost for a little bit. And I remember sitting my mom down one day, and I was like, Mom, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I feel like I'm failing. And she goes, well, when's the last time you sat in front of a piano? I was like, honestly, Mom, it's been a couple years. And she was like, you should probably get back to doing that. You weren't too bad at it. And I wrote my first song that night, and I didn't look back. I started writing every single day by myself. Ended up moving to Nashville in 2020, and the rest is history.
We're glad you're here. Once you got here, you started posting on TikTok. Rakaya, you found Tucker, and you guys started working together. Leading up to Wind Up Missing You coming out, a lot happened. Talk about that artist development process. What were the two of you working on, and how did you know that once he had Wind Up Missing You and Wine into Whiskey, it was go time?
Yeah, after I reached out from finding him on TikTok, we signed a publishing deal, and we were very adamant about making sure we developed and wrote songs for at least 2 years and developed a catalog, because everyone in this room knows that one song is not enough. So we built that as much as possible, and he was very eager to put out music, and I just kept saying, hold on longer. One of those songs, is hopefully gonna be on his album. And, he was posting that one a lot, but in the same week in December or November, he wrote Wine into Whiskey and Wind Up Missing You. And so it felt like we had a sound developing and it was time to go.
Okay, so we're in December of 2023. You're teasing songs on TikTok. I remember you calling us and saying, hey, I think we're gonna get started in 2024. Take things slow, introduce them to the industry, start doing a little media prep, and then 2024 was not slow. Things took off immediately, and ultimately you got invited to be on the Cameron Marlowe tour. That changed everything, because you can't tour without music. So let's talk about that. We'd love to hear from both of you about just what happened at the beginning of 2024. And we can't really talk about Wind Up Missing You without talking about Wine into Whiskey. It's a really special thing when you see dueling singles happening for a new artist. And so Wine into Whiskey came first. I'll let you guys talk about why, and then Wind Up Missing You right after it. But we'd love to just hear about what that part of the year looked like.
Yeah, you wanna go?
Yeah. Like she was saying earlier, we were going to wait a while to release music because we were like, we got a handful of songs from the last couple of years, and, Wine to Whiskey and Wind Up Missing You happened within the same week, and I kind of teased them around the same time. But Wine to Whiskey was first, and it was kind of doing its thing on social media and stuff. And then Cameron Marlowe hit us up, and he was like, hey, I want Tucker on tour. I just saw him online, and I believe in this kid. I want him to come direct support for me for my next tour. And we were all sitting at a breakfast, actually, when we got the offer, talking about how slow we were going to take it. And that breakfast conversation flips a full 180 to, all right, we need music right now. We need to start dropping some stuff. And Wine and Whiskey was the first one because it felt right at the time. And I know that's like kind of a super vague answer, but it was the first one I released, and that was kind of doing better than Wind Up Missing You was at the time, so it just made the most sense.
Yeah, I think, as you said, I called you, when we just started talking about like what it would look like to release meeting. That meeting was with our distribution of like what that year would look like. And then I got the text from Cameron's manager saying, Cameron found some of Tucker's videos and he'd love to invite him out on tour. And we all looked at each other at the table like, well, you can't tour without music. So that's the first thing. Wind Up Missing You felt like the sound. So it's kind of makes sense that it was the first radio single, but Wind into Whiskey was exploding on socials. And so it also felt like the easiest to get done quickly. And the demo vocal is the voice you hear on the master. So it was the easiest one to flip as quicker. And I think it's also important to say, like, in that time between December and January, in that meeting, he had nothing to go listen to. There was no music. And so it was really important to us to try to gain traction from that. And so we created, it's kind of like looking at Gemma, but a follower campaign where it was like, well, they have nothing to click to, there's no music to listen to, so let's just have them follow him. And by the time it got time to release Wine into Whiskey, he had over 50,000 followers just on Spotify.
I think it was 100,000.
Yeah, by Wind Up Missing You, it was 100. But that's all we had. Like, you could not even populate his page. And so, it started going really, really quickly. And Wind Up Missing You is also building at the same time. We're like, oh, okay, well, we should probably get that song done too. And that's kind of where Jake comes in, because Chris is the producer on that song. Jake's like, all right, well, we can get that one done too. And it all kind of just came together.
And it's worth noting, Jake was the publisher for the co-write that was Wind Up Missing You. So you weren't even at Universal yet.
No, I didn't even work at the label until March 11th.
It is a small world. Okay, so that brings us to just streaming. Obviously, streaming was a big part of our early story here. Gemma, what were you seeing on your end on behalf of all of the streaming services? I mean, you guys were all really early on, and Spotify's had a huge part of his journey. Can you just tell us about what you were seeing as Rakaya mentioned, the pages being populated, and then we're getting 1 and then 2 and then 3 songs out in that early spring?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unusual to have a page that's not even searchable. Like when you typed Tucker Wetmore the day that Wine came out, you couldn't find him because our system takes like 24 hours to populate these pages. And so this thing was off to the races truly before it even began. And I actually do want to take a second to just highlight the incredible team we have at Spotify Nashville. These guys are equally as passionate as they are talented, and they were in the weeds on this before Wine even came out with Rakaya and co. And so our team is just truly, I'm in awe of them every day. And so they were right there in the weeds on it, ready to take
Jackie
a
and
bet.
Miller were like texting all night. Like,
Literally
do you
all
see
night.
It? Do you see it?
Exactly. I didn't come into the picture until, the summer? And so this song comes out, and it's just like pandemonium, absolute pandemonium. And through our playlist ecosystem, this song grows so quickly it lands in Hot Country, the biggest country playlist in the world. There's not many times, if any, other than UTech, in my history at Spotify where I've seen an artist's first song land into Hot Country. And then there's Wind Up. And so, like Olivia said, there's this incredible duel going on with these songs that are only a month apart. And so Wind Up comes out into the world. It's another smash. And the streams triple. So from song 1, first song an artist has put out, to song 2, there was already an incredible amount of momentum, and then it triples. And fun fact, it never goes down. It's still, to this day, holding at that level. It's truly incredible. And I think the story I want to tell that really drives this point home is that around this time, with these 2 songs just absolutely crushing out there, we've started planning our largest consumer-facing event, Spotify House at CMA Fest. And so sort of February, March, we have an offer to Tuck to have a place on our Fresh Finds rooftop. Fresh Finds is our program totally dedicated to independent artists, and this rooftop serves as like the hottest up-and-comers play on this roof. It's always just feral. By the time June rolls around, Tuck is not on the rooftop. He is playing main stage, and it's just insane watching these kids lose their mind. Just, again, absolutely feral down there at All Red. And I just don't think that's ever happened. I don't think we've ever had an artist come out the gate like this and upgrade from rooftop to main stage. It's just such an incredible story, and it feels like, an amazing launch to what followed.
That's amazing. We love that story. It really does encapsulate what was happening in real time and how quickly it was changing. Simultaneously, during the spring, Tucker was on the road. He was independent. He's playing shows. We'll talk about one in town, and then obviously on the Cameron Marlowe tour that we keep mentioning. Rakaya, Jake, Tucker, this was a really special time. Ultimately, he obviously signed with UMG Nashville, but you gave it a tough fight. And it was a really, really fun experience to have these shows be sort of the tent poles that everyone was going out to gauge. Is this really working on the road as much as it is online or on the streaming platforms? Rakaya and Tucker, do you want to touch on that first Nashville show at Live Oak and just some of those moments that were happening on the road, and specifically what was happening with Wind Up Missing You when you would kick that song off in the way that you would?
Yeah. So in the heat of all of this last year, my buddy asked me, his name's Chase Irwin, he goes, hey, you want to play a round for us on a random like Wednesday or something like that? I was like, yeah, man, I'm there. It sounds like a good time. I haven't seen you in a while. It'd be good to see you. And then a couple weeks passed by, and then I had talked to Rakaya, and I was like, hey, I got this round tomorrow. She goes, you have a what? I go, yeah, I'm just playing a buddy's round down at Live Oak. She's like, you can't do that anymore. You know, like, you don't understand. I was like, I don't, but I already gave him my word, so I got to show up. And so I ended up going to the round the next day. As soon as I walked through the back door, it is absolutely slam-packed in there. Wall to wall, you can't even walk up to get a drink. And there's people on the street. There's people on the balcony on the other side of the street.
But nobody usually goes to Live Oak.
No.
Noted.
No, absolutely not. But so I'm like, dang, you guys have a packed house. I was talking to Chase, my buddy at this time, and he goes, dude, this is your crowd. I go, what are you talking about? I just got here. He goes, dude, they've been waiting for hours for you to get here. I was like, holy shit, all right. Hopefully I don't mess up. So I get up on stage. People start, hooting and hollering, and then I play a couple songs. I think I had 4 songs or something like that. I get to my third one, which I played Wine into Whiskey, and that was out for a week at that time. And it had been out for a week, and I was like, shoot, I hope some people know this song. I barely had to sing that thing. And if I was, you wouldn't have been able to hear me because everybody was sitting in there screaming it from top to bottom, super loud. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And then I introduced my next song after that. My 4th song that I played was Wind Up Missing You. And me and my guitarist started doing this thing that day, but we've done it pretty much every show since we played. I'll sing the a cappella chorus of the song just to start out with little to no intro, and I start doing that, and the place just erupts. And I was like, holy this song's not even out yet. How is this even possible? Then everybody was singing it, and it was probably one of the craziest, holy crap, I think I might have a chance moments that I've ever had.
Yeah, and I think there were a lot of those on the road. Jake, do you want to talk about what you were seeing in your pursuit of Tucker Wetmore on the road?
Yeah, so all of what he was talking about then, I think happened before even I started at the label. But I knew Tucker not very well personally, but I was part of setting up the co-write that became Wind Up Missing You in November. Rakai and I used to work together at BMG years ago, and she called me, and so I was aware. I knew the song because my writer-producer at the time wrote it. He produced it. I knew the song. I thought it was a hit. When I first got it, I was like, Rakai, we're pitching this to an artist with a record deal, right? This is a hit. I can go get it cut on somebody else. And but fast forward, I start to see all this stuff happening. I get the job at Universal, and from day one, it was like, what do you know about Tucker Wetmore? This is exploding. And I was like, well, have you heard the next song? And so he's on this tour. He has no time. Every label's calling. I'm new. I don't know this whole process, but I know Rakaya. And I went to Texas and flew into an airport I've never heard of, rented a car, drove 2 more hours to, Nacogdoches, Texas. And showed up. Tucker's playing with the drummer, an amazing drummer, Coop, he's my boy, and a guitar player, and running tracks, and everybody there, I know it was the Cameron tour, and Cameron's great, but I feel like everybody there was also there to see Tucker, and they knew the words to all these songs that hadn't even come out yet, and I think the first show I went to, it was still before Wind Up came out, and they're singing along to every word, and cell phones are out, and it was just unbelievable. I had to vie for his time with 6 other labels that were there.
Yeah, and then we convinced you to come to all the other shows.
Well, yeah, and I had a flight out of Dallas the next day, and I met Tucker. Really, the first time we actually hung out much. You were in my publishing house before writing, but that was before I was really paying attention in this capacity. and met his mom. He had like a ton of family out on the road and buddies, and just connected. I was the last man standing. I rode back to the hotel that we were both at in the back of the SUV that was loaded with the merch.
Extremely tipsy, might I add.
Yeah, we had a good time. And he was like, well, I'm going to see you tomorrow, right? And I was like, no, I'm flying out, dog. And he was like, well, dude, you should come tomorrow. So I changed my flight, and I stayed, and I went to Billy Bob's. And it was like the same thing, but just more people. And it was just nuts. And I'm texting my boss and, the former head of the company, and I'm like, dude, we got to do this. And it's like, duh. Like, it was just a rocket ship, and it was awesome to see. And then we'll get to more.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, great A&R because you just did it. But a lot of those, we haven't talked really about social media yet, and those moments when they're screaming the song and it's not out yet played a big part on socials because we would upload an iPhone video. Typically, they honestly were mine because I was using that cinematic, and there's one from Natchitoches and Live Oak that have 3 million views right now or more. And it just kept doubling down. And it just kept, the pre-saves kept going up. So those moments, although the song wasn't out, they were singing the chorus enough to keep it going online.
That's amazing. Are there any other tips or tricks that you guys have, speaking of socials, in those early days when you're trying to get traction on a song, whether it isn't out yet or newly out?
I guess from my standpoint, the artist standpoint, always say yes to everything. That is my biggest piece of advice, especially in the early days. Say yes, yes, even if you don't want to do it, even if you're missing a toe from the night before, show up and do it.
Great advice. Okay, so those are just the first few months of 2024. We're going to fast forward a little bit to CMA Fest. I think it was a really big tentpole in the year that you had last year. A lot has happened. You've been working like crazy. Rakaya, we'll touch on this, but you have already serviced 2 songs to radio. Is that right?
Just Wine into Whiskey.
Okay.
Maybe the same week Wine Up Missing was coming out, because I'm that crazy.
Tell us why you made that decision.
I'm nuts. That's probably part of it. But, once the song was out, some people just started adding it on their own. And the biggest thing I saw coming through my email was, can I just have the MP3? And I was like, yeah. Well, why don't I just give it to all of you? So I did it, and we got some requests, and, it started rolling in. And then we were on the ad board every Monday, and I was like, I love this. Like, we can kind of do this on our own and kind of start the traction. Why wait? And there were some people like Ryan Michaels who were spinning the shit out of that song. So it's like, okay, let's go. Let's keep going. So we kind of worked the song out a little bit by ourselves, and then Wind Up Missing You came out. And then we were like, oh, wow, should we do it again? But I was like, let's have a bigger conversation. And we were already kind of about to sign, so.
Yeah, okay. So we're in May, June, essentially. Tucker's signing with UMG Nashville. And I don't want to get any of this wrong, but I believe that we formally announced it from the Sky Deck. Is that right? The signing?
I know we took a photo.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that was announced. Yeah, I don't know that we had announced it at that point either.
Okay.
But we had a June 10th ad date, so it was around that so it was announced before then.
Okay, exactly what I'm getting to. So CMA Fest was huge. The Spotify house that Gemma mentioned, he's got a main stage slot. It was insane. The Hard Rock stage, Tucker played it. It was 10 times capacity. That's us just guessing. He shut down Broadway, and it was
nuts.
It was nuts. It for me at least. It was like nothing I'd ever seen, and it felt like it felt like the thing that everyone was talking about. And then we had all this pressure riding on the fact that we knew that the single was going to radio. So before we get to that looming radio ad date, Tucker, what did it feel like coming back to Nashville after having all the success on the road and, being so busy with label meetings and everything? Did you feel like you had to put your money where your mouth was with the song, or was it just like a really sweet homecoming?
What do you mean? Home where? Like Nashville?
Nashville. Just coming back to everybody after being on the road. What did that feel like to have these in-town shows?
It felt great. You're talking about CMA Fest? Yeah. It felt great. And it was my first CMA Fest ever, and I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't expect a Amber Alert to hit everybody's phone saying, hey, do not go down Broadway. Tucker's on stage. But it was a really cool time, and that was probably another moment where I was like, I might be able to do this. It was cool.
That's amazing. All right, Jimmy, it's time for radio. Tell us about it. Tucker's the newest signing at UMG. How did you choose what would be at radio, and tell us about those early days?
Well, when Jake was trying to sign Tucker, he came to all of us and said, we want you guys to go out on the road and meet this young man and see what he does. So we a handful of us flew to Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm an SEC guy. That was not cool. So we go to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and it was a great night. You were opening for Cameron, and you just watched the crowd. I mean, I think you guys were already starting to see traction happen on Wind Up Missing You, but you saw what was going on, and the minute he hits the first note, the crowd's going nuts. The song's not out, and they're going nuts. And it was just kind of one of those things that you saw, and it's like, okay, they're both big. We're probably not going to miss with either one. The promo guy's always going to default to tempo, so that was a little bit of a help. But just watching the way the crowd reacted and the way they sang back, it was kind of obvious. And then, of course, when we were able to share it with the whole EMI team, we pretty much all went, that's the one. There was no argument from these guys, and it's like, all right, that's what we need to do. Let's set it up and let's go. And it was like grabbing a hold of a comet, because he was already out of the gate and gone. There was no, let's throw him in a car. We're going to spend 6, 8, 10 weeks on the road going to see radio stations and playing conference rooms. He's already on tour. So we just had to jump a hold of that and still be able to do as many visits and meet as many people as we can. But at the same time, we had a song already moving. So it was just a matter of us jumping on and trying to guide it the right way.
It was great to finally meet Tucker today.
Yeah. Jimmy, don't leave out all the calls, all the annoying calls from me.
Oh, from you? Yeah, it was funny because it was Rakai saying, hey, we'd already done this on our own. We'd already shipped this on our own. So when we come in, it's like, all right, you already got all this stuff going. We had to fix most of it. But you...
I love you so much.
Okay, we really didn't. But nonetheless, it was just constant conversations with Rakai and her team, and just like, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing. And as Tucker said earlier, say yes to everything. He did. So it put us in a very good position to be able to just kind of go.
That's amazing. So you're balancing touring. What did that, is it fair to call it a non-traditional radio tour?
Well, there was no radio tour,
No
period.
radio tour
so,
at all. Okay.
So yeah, you can call that. We were able to bounce off of a handful of dates and sneak into a couple of markets and see some folks. CMA Fest, we were trying to put him in front of as many people as we could, and then getting people out to shows that he was doing. And so we've tried, and like this week, if you've been around, you've seen Tucker, because we have had him very, very visible because he wants to meet everyone. And so we've just been trying to make that happen. So yeah, it was not your normal traditional way of doing things by any means.
Let's talk about those early believers. People came onto the song really early. Some of those had already been playing Wine and Whiskey. Some were already playing Wind Up Missing You. How did you navigate those early conversations? And obviously Todd is here with us as well. Let's just talk about that and what that early stage of getting the ads on the board looked like.
Well, you had a lot of people already playing Wine, as you said. There were quite a few people, and they were playing the hell out of it too. They weren't just burying it in overnight. So knowing we had a new song coming out, it was just a matter of, hey, I know you're playing this one. When we go, you're obviously a believer and a supporter. We need to make sure you're with us on the new one as well. And a lot of people, Todd included, that's why he's up here, were already playing. They were playing both of them. So that made things a little easier in some of those markets. And I still have a few people, and maybe they're in here, maybe they're not, that still give me hell because we haven't released Wine and Whiskey yet. And that's okay. But we were able to release, kind of navigate Wind Up Missing You into a successful ad date, and then it was just gone at that point. It was fun. Still fun.
Todd, do you remember the first time Jimmy or somebody from his team called you about Tucker?
Yeah, it's like they call me about this guy named Tucker Wetmore. I'm like, I'm already playing him, man. Like, listeners have already told me what's going on with Tucker. And yeah, we were playing Wine early in March, and then y'all came around June with the new single, but it's like you can't deny what's happening with some of these artists, and it is funny saying that. I just met you, Tucker. I mean, but like, Bailey was like that, Megan Maroney was like that, Dash was like that, and they've all are doing this stage this week, and it's like, these guys are just blowing up, and you got to pay attention to that stuff. Your listeners are going to them, they're finding them, they're making the hits today. So we better be playing those hits too,
Absolutely. Were you paying attention to the streaming story that was happening when you were making this decision?
Me.
Well, both of you. But
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was the story in the beginning, and it was
7
obvious.
million a week.
What's that?
7 million a week.
Yeah. No, if we were
consistently.
But it was a big part of our story, and Todd's like, hey, the listeners have already told us that this is what needs to be happening. So we were lucky that we were part of it. We were absolutely paying attention. We're still paying attention.
Yeah, the streams are undeniable. When you see numbers like that, and look, we have all the data we need. We know what listeners are doing. We know what our fans are doing. And I know there's a lot of discussion on whether streamers are our listeners or not. It doesn't matter. They're fans, and they're country fans. You got to pay attention to that. And like those numbers were just massive. And listeners are coming to us asking for it. Like, so you serve them, give them what they want.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the fact that it already had so much success at the streaming platforms by the time it was climbing the charts. And obviously, it peaked in the first week of January. So how did everyone on the stage, because I think it was literally every single person on the stage, how did we all figure out how to fuel Wind Up Missing You while also knowing, one, you've got to put more music out. Tucker's still a brand new artist. And two, what can be done at the streaming platforms specifically to keep that song going so that radio has everything that they need? Gemma, I'll throw to you first because I know that you had a heavy hand in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to backtrack just a tiny bit, when Wine came out and headed straight for Hot Country, Wind Up just lapsed it. And so not only did Tuck have his first song in Hot Country, he had his second too. And that's where it stayed. And full props to our country editor, Claire. It was just phenomenal. And so this song is just absolutely dominating. 7 million a week, Jake. It's just going. And streaming timelines can be quite different from radio timelines. I think we've talked about it a bunch, Todd. It's these timelines don't match up perfectly, but Spotify was really interested in continuing the investment in Tucker and to keep this thing just on the track to the moon. And I think one of the key highlights going to sort of that feed them the new music kind of thing that we were doing, we're very proud to select Tucker for our Radar US program. So Radar at Spotify, is completely dedicated to emerging, developing talent. Really exciting stuff. Spotify uses resources both on our platform and off of our platform to help further these careers. I think it's worth noting the only other country artist we've had do it is a guy named Zach Bryan, if you've heard of him. So we were so ecstatic to have Tuck come into this program around the time there was whispers of an EP. And so one of the honestly highlights of my Spotify career was through this Radar program, we took Tuck back to Butte, Montana, his college town. And to continue telling the story, to keep this song going and to keep it climbing up the radio charts, we got a couple cameras on him and we stood on the football field where Tucker's life changed forever and his music career started, and we got to tell that story with him while these fans are just going nuts for this music, but also new fans, both PDs and listeners alike, are finding Tucker. And so we're watching this momentum build and build, and so this content comes out from this Radar program. It was pretty close to the EP, maybe a couple days after we were in Montana, and we also did the live show in this college town. If I thought Spotify House was feral, Butte, Montana was feral. Roll digs, Tuck, roll digs. And it was just amazing to watch these college-age kids screaming every single word for an EP that had only probably dropped a couple days before live, including, I don't think you even sung Wind Up that night. I don't think you could. They were singing it for you. And so this program and the continued investment by Spotify on Tuck really, at least in my opinion, helped the momentum at radio and kept this thing going so that it could keep climbing the charts and really heavily supported this EP, just as we had on those first 2 singles, to get this thing going. And I mean, I think the rest is history for where it ended up as #1. But I think that's kind of like the key moment for me, was this Radar program fell at the right time for guys like Todd, who hadn't had a chance to meet Tuck but wanted to know his story, and it was wrapped up in everything we do on platform too.
You know, I mean, we always need metrics to get a song going in the beginning, because until there's enough spins and enough recognition on it, you're not going to have research. So those streaming metrics were exactly what we had, and that got us to a point to where we started reaching mass audience. We got where we were able to start getting research back on the record, and it came back super strong early. And you know, we were at that point, the research and takes over, and then you have strong streaming metrics. That's everything you need. Great song and a great talent, obviously, is where it starts. But that's helped drive everything up to the top. And yeah, we were able to ring the bell.
I mean, music is moving faster than ever. The charts are going slower than ever. And I think about this, like this room today, and it's like, you know, radio's I'm the last guy to talk today. Why is radio last on some of this stuff? You already got the metrics, man. It's right there. We just talked about it. And then, of course, we want the research to match that, and typically it does when it's blowing up like that. There's not too many that don't see that happening. So it's just like, man, we just got to go faster on these records, man. And Tucker's a great example of that.
It took us 6 months. That's actually really fast these days.
Yeah, 30 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. 30 weeks. Gold by September, Opry debut. That's like unheard of.
Yeah, what were you doing 1 year ago today? Nothing.
I was probably drinking with my buddies.
Turning wine into whiskey.
Sitting on a handful of songs. That's what I was doing.
Okay, I love all of that. Jake, you and Rakaya got into the A&R of it all, got an EP ready. All of this is happening simultaneously. EP came out top of October. How does it all work together? What songs did you choose, and what was the thought process about making sure that you didn't distract from Wind Up Missing You?
Well, when we signed Tucker, I think we got the deal done in, was it April? He told us, man, I want an album out in September, like a full album, because it coincided with your anniversary of moving to Nashville, right? And just with his schedule on the road and just everything that he had going on all at once, and then also just production and timeline, like that's just obviously not realistic. But also, you know, we're going to radio in June, and that's going to be a cycle. The streaming cycle doesn't always line up, and in this case, Jimmy moved it really quick, which is great in hindsight. But yeah, we had a single, but one thing for me that I wanted to make sure that we didn't do is we get him out on the road. He's got to have more music to tour. We got to start, like, I didn't want it to turn, you know, Tucker or Wine Into Whiskey or Wind Up Missing You into just a moment or a viral song, but a career and an artist. And so the downtime that he did have, we set up writing camps, found some outside songs. But yeah, September, finishing that EP, we were holding back songs that will be on this record that you did announce today, right? I'm not.
I did announce it today.
Yes.
Like
okay.
2 hours
I wanted to
ago.
make sure I wasn't jumping the gun, but yeah, because we wanted to save back songs that we thought would be, you know, radio single number 2 and number 3 and number 4 and et cetera. But that supported the live show and started to tell just the brand and the person that Tucker is, that I don't think anybody can get off just a 15-second TikTok clip. At that, I had the opportunity to, as well as everybody else on this team, to obviously love the songs, but like just love Tucker and getting to know him. And so that was my focus.
Yeah, and I think we still had to tell a story for people who didn't know him yet, so we were conscious to go back to Washington and shoot around that music. But the writing retreat was really important, I think, for the music. I think those were really core songwriters where they got to tap into who Tucker was, stay up late, and that is how a lot of those songs came.
And a lot of those songs that were written on that first retreat, we haven't even put out yet.
Yes.
Because we want to tell the story
So like
the
the
right way.
playlist I gave Spotify, like some of the songs were on there, but they weren't on the EP. They're gonna be on the album. But Silverado Blue, that was written before he got signed. So we had to like pile those songs up, but also tell a story. And we don't talk about What Would You Do a lot, but that song also came out. And so we had 3 W songs that were all consuming really well. And how could we aid to that and create a story? And we named it part of the lyric of the song, so we kept the narrative of Wind Up Missing You going.
Which was also the name of the tour.
Right, the name of the tour. Tour started right after, so it all kind of just fit together. Like, I feel like that's what the conversations we were having constantly. Like, how does that all wrap around?
Keeping everything still focused on Wind Up Missing You. Absolutely. You have a headline, the EP's come out, you have a headlining tour, totally sold out, and Jimmy, you're plotting this peak date and taking it up the
Plotting,
charts.
I like that word. I'm always plotting something.
Always plotting. Are there any key moments that we want to highlight after the EP came out that happened that may have been pivotal? And it's okay if it just climbed up all the way up the charts, but is there anything we're missing in that time?
I think what the EP helped do, as they mentioned, it helped tell his story. Because again, we weren't able to go out and do your traditional type radio tour, and therefore people get to know him as well as you sometimes do on those visits. But the music was able to help tell the story, and more than anything, it was able to help show all you guys that it was more than one song. There's depth. We've got more coming. We've got hits coming. Speaking of that, the new single drops tomorrow night. It's tonight. Yeah, it drops tomorrow morning. So tonight at midnight.
And what's that single called?
That's called 3-2-1.
Thank you.
It goes for ads on 310. But hey, Miranda wasn't kidding from the stage earlier. But no,
And it goes number 1 30 weeks from 310.
We're shooting for 29.
But no, the EP just helped tell the story of who he is and his music, and obviously it helped build a live show that helped us build everything else.
Amazing. All right, so we are headed into the holidays, and it's time to go number 1. A lot of work was put into that. Can Tucker and Jimmy, can y'all just talk about December and what it felt like from your end, Tucker? I mean, this is your first time going through this, and Jimmy, I know you and your team worked your absolute you-know-what's off over the holidays.
It was, most people know the freeze comes during the holidays, so it's a freeze. It's called that for a reason. So, but when we kind of looked at the way the record was heading in the trajectory, the map said, hey, you're going for it during the freeze to come out on that first chart. And the regionals, John, Mike, Briarman, and Trudy, I mean, they did it all. They jumped in and took time out of their day off, their holiday, their official company holidays, and they wore people out. And because we wanted to make sure this was big for Tucker, it was big for us, that we didn't want to miss. And it's a time when people don't normally hear from us. Well, they heard from a lot of us that week. So yeah, it was very different, and it was very stressful. I'll give you that, but hey, we did it, and that's what mattered and what counted.
I think Jimmy's words to me on text, because I was checking in, I'm like, dude, is there anything I can do? And he's like, dude, if there's something you could do, we're already doing it. But he texted me, said, man, it's just hand-to-hand combat. And yeah, props to your team.
It goes without saying. I mean, we're up here talking about metrics. The other biggest part of what we had from radio was belief in him and belief in the song. And that's why when we asked for, hey, help us make sure we get there, it came back.
And that was a lot of Tucker's effort too, right? He really poured into everyone that you gave him the opportunity to meet.
Absolutely. And then we had people like Todd that said, all right, we got you. It's going to happen.
Tucker, how did that feel for you?
I mean, I love meeting new people, and I love meeting good people, and pretty much anyone you put me in front of, which is a lot of you guys are just good, solid people to be around. And this wouldn't have happened without a lot of the people in this room right here. And I can't express to you guys, all of you, how thankful and, in disbelief I am of the way my career's, folding out. And like you said earlier on, a year ago today, I was just probably hanging out with my buddies and not really doing anything, just sitting on a bunch of songs. But you guys have changed my life in the last year, and truly from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys. Thank you.
Also, a big part of that push, and I called out the regionals, and again, they're the front lines, but we have the part of the Universal group called the Center that was, David Freeman, Damon Moberly, Nick Caper, and Houston Gaither, and they were just into it as much as anybody. I mean, everybody was wearing it. In the beginning, when I was being worn out by Rakaya, well, we were all wearing each other out during that period. Just where we at, what's the numbers? And going into Saturday, you hope you can call it at that point. Tucker's hitting me going, are we good? Are we good? I'm like, give me another hour. Are we good? I need 2 more hours. And I was like, I'm sorry I'm making you wait, but we're not going to jinx anything. But hey, we were able to celebrate when it was done.
I mean, one thing I want to talk about too is just the traction on social media that never stopped. I think that's really important, that it aids into radio and streaming because there's something happening in the background. UGCs are very important when they happen because it's translating the song to a distance. There's an audience being created miles and miles without us doing anything, and Wind Up Missing You, every time it gets posted, it goes the miles again. So that doubled down on the streams and the radio, which gets us to the #1 song.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone was hitting every single bucket for sure. Is there anything I forgot to touch on about this song before we just move into what's next for Tucker? Good? Tucker,
Yes.
what's next?
I might go home after this.
That's what you asked.
No, I am dropping my my next push at country radio tonight at 11 o'clock, 12, whenever it drops. But it's dropping tonight. It's called 321, and I'm very excited about it. It feels really good. I know my team's fired up about it, and it'll come out tonight. And if you want to listen to it, I guess we announced album earlier, so I can open my mouth about that. But I'm dropping an album April 25th, and it's my debut album. It's my first project that I really sat down and kind of got a little dirty with it, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm very excited to share it with you guys. The rest of the year is just touring and making more music and smiling while I'm doing it. That's my plan.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys all for your time, and thank you everybody for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, y'all.